Good evening. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for being here. It's a Monday night. There are other things to do, and I so much appreciate your willingness to come out and spend some time, talk about our community. This is really a fun perspective to be at. Very august, very formal, and so nice to look out and see faces of people I care about, my colleagues, my partners in the community, my family, my neighbors. My name's Ann Wilson. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of United Way of the Bay Area, and it really is a pleasure to be here with you. It's really an honor to be included in this series. So if you're here for Madeleine Albright, she was last month. And if you're here for Isabel Allende, she's on April 2nd. So I just want to make sure, kind of the stewardesses say, if you're headed toward Los Angeles, this is the right plane. If you're not headed towards Ann Wilson, you may depart the plane now. You can imagine, I was immensely flattered when I got the call from Denise Lucy and Jane Winter to be a part of this series, especially when they told me what the spring lineup looked like. I mean, I haven't recently written a Pulitzer Prize-winning book. I haven't recently written any book, actually. But when I met with them, they asked me if I would speak about community and philanthropy and what it means to be involved in the community, and that's the stuff I love, and that is exactly what I like to talk about. And we picked this topic, advancing the common good, and how civic life enriches all of us, and that's what we're going to spend a few minutes this evening talking about. But I have to say, so I signed on, and then I got a voicemail from Jane Winter, and it started like this: Ann, I have some very exciting news for you. It was about the flagpole signs. Now, if you've driven down 4th Street or if you wander around this campus, you might have noticed these flagpole signs, and my anonymity is completely shot at this point, She didn't mention that they were going to be larger than life, and, what about that orange hair? That is a color that is not in nature, So I was really a little taken aback that was... I was sort of in this great company, and it's become a little bit of a joke in our household as my kids and I drive around San Rafael, or we do use the library here, by the way. When we're on campus, they're saying to me, "There you are, Mom," and I've gotten the voicemails and the emails from friends and colleagues who say, "I was walking down 4th Street, and there you were." And so, I'm getting used to that, and Jane, let me know when they're coming down. I'm looking forward to that. So over the next hour or so, I'm going to talk a little bit about the community and about the common good, and then we're going to open it up for some conversation. Because in this room, in fact, are some of this community's most active civic leaders, and you know who you are. And you'll be as interested to hear from them as you will be to hear what I have to say. I'm planning to share some thoughts about this notion of common good and civic life, and then talk a little bit about the Marin landscape and maybe offer some principles for how we think about our civic life and evaluate the opportunities we all have to get involved in our community. So that's what you're in for. I'll begin with a little bit of a qualifier, and that I will share my observations, of course, through the lens of nearly 30 years of public service. Now that's where you're supposed to gasp and say, it's impossible that she could have 30 years of service. Well, I do, and that is the lens. And I also have this great experience through the United Way, and that is, of course, as well, the lens through which I'll be talking about this idea of civic life and common good. But I will also be talking to you as a mom and as a neighbor here in San Rafael. My husband and 2 children and I live down the road a bit in East San Rafael, and that is a part of my view of the subject here. But my goal, as I said to Denise and Jane, is to create a bit of a conversation among neighbors, and that's why the house lights are up, so that you can see each other and I can see you, and we might talk a bit after I finish my remarks about this community that we love and we call home. One of my favorite thinkers and writers about public service and civic affairs in general is John Gardner. He was the Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare under Lyndon Johnson. But most relevant to this topic is he was also one of the founders of 2 very important national organizations, Common Cause and the Independent Sector. And they are dedicated to ensuring an informed civic community and making sure that the nonprofit sector is strong and vital, respectively. He spent many years at Stanford in residence teaching and lecturing and writing, and I had the privilege during that time to meet him and hear him speak on several occasions. Now, John Gardner believed and wrote that the nonprofit sector is a significant source of renewal in society. And he wrote this: "The sector comfortably harbors innovators, maverick movements, groups which feel that they must fight for their place in the sun, and critics and dissenters of both liberal and conservative persuasion. And it is from just such individuals and groups that one may expect emergence of the ideas that will dominate our society and our world a century hence." End quote. He advanced the idea, in fact, that there are certain institutions in the community that should be nurtured and preserved because their vitality is one of the best indicators of the strength and health of the community in general. They're the kinds of organizations that bring broad sections of the community together to learn together, to debate together, to solve problems together, to improve the quality of life together. These are organizations like the United Way, like the Chambers of Commerce, like the League of Women Voters, like institutions like Dominican University. And how lucky we are here in San Rafael and Marin to have this great neighbor, Dominican University. Not only for the outstanding education of educators, nursing professionals, business professionals, but also because the university has taken it upon themselves to create a forum for intellectual discourse on many, many topics. I found out that over the course of the year, we could expect that 10,000 people will visit this campus to discuss topics of relevance to society and science and community, including these lectures. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Denise Lucy, who is a professor of business and leadership, and she is also the executive director of the Institute for Leadership Studies here at the university, and she very much wants to welcome you to her campus. So please welcome Denise Lucy.
Thank you so much, Ann. I see you as our rock star at Dominican University, and it's just stunning, and it's wonderful to have you here tonight. And I'm thrilled that we've made you even more famous than you were before. But I also know that many guests this evening have come to our lecture series before. This is one of our Institute for Leadership Studies lectures. Our lecture series seeks to engage community and students and faculty in ideas, and we open the doors to our campus, to our neighbors, and we're thrilled that you take your time to join us. And much of what we seek to do at the Institute for Leadership Studies is to promote how individuals, organizations, and society changes in a positive way, how we can make organizational change by that one individual who brings together others for important change. And of course, the United Way of the Bay Area is critical in that regard. I would like to thank some of our partners for this evening. One is the Dominican Scholars Program. Thank you to Dr. Jyoti Ghosh for encouraging her students to join us tonight. Also, Dr. Luis Calingo, our Dean of Business and Leadership. Thank you so much for your support. And I'm so thrilled to see my wonderful colleague, Professor Liz Capener, here tonight, who always brings her students with her. And very much, very much, our California Management Institute supporters who have provided us assistance for the last couple of years. We have many CMI students here this evening as well, so thank you so much for coming. I do want to tell you a little bit about Ms. Wilson, who has, as she says, 30 years of experience in community service. Her tenure at the United Way includes executive leadership in grant-making, marketing, strategic planning, and community campaign efforts. And in the year 2000, she took the role of the CEO as the first woman CEO of the United Way. And it's proud to have her among our Women's Leadership Series this semester. Under her leadership, the United Way of the Bay Area has transformed into a community impact organization. And it brings together resources and people to address the needs of the Bay Area, the most pressing challenges that we have. Based on her efforts, she has helped to reshape the organization into an aggressive collaborator, one that has been both philanthropic, engage the community and business and government leaders. Also to position the United Way as a regional expert on achieving a deep and lasting impact on the Bay Area's most pressing social issues, those being self-sufficiency, education, health, and safe communities. And it is my deep pleasure and honor to be here this evening to hear what you have to say to us. Thank you, Ann.
So the other thing is I do want to say, don't be intimidated by how many cards it looks like I'm holding. I am a woman of a certain age, and there's like 3 words on each page because I don't want to use those little glasses, but I did bring them if I have to. I did. So I said at the outset that my thoughts about the common good and civic life are very much influenced by my experience at the United Way, and I thought I should take a couple of moments to speak a little bit about that, and Denise shared a little bit about the United Way, but I should say that there are 1,300 United Ways across the country. We are one of them. And they are all separate and independent nonprofit organizations governed locally, and I must say that I have 3 or 4 board members of the United Way of the Bay Area in the room. Thank you so much for being here. And we all derive from the community chest. You know the box on your Monopoly board. Well, that came about in 1887 in Denver when a priest, a rabbi, and 2 ministers got together and discussed ways that they might actually care for their flock, their congregations more efficiently if they did so together, if they reached across and worked toward the common good collaboratively. And that idea caught on. Here in the Bay Area, the first community chest was founded in San Francisco in 1923. Sometime in the 1950s, as community chests had grown up and town by town by town, some Bay Area leaders said, let's combine and become the United Bay Area Crusade. And so we became a regional organization. And somewhere in the 70s, United Ways and community chests and United Funds and Red Feather societies across the country joined under the banner and the name United Way. And we have been at it since that time. And right around that time of the collaboration, one of the major changes occurred that enabled this idea to really grow, and that is through the leadership of the United Way or community chests, the AFL-CIO, and business leaders, payroll deduction was born and implemented. And the ability to raise money in an efficient way in the workplace became the channel through which United Ways gathered resources in the community. 3 years ago, our board did, in fact, revise our mission statement to reflect this idea that Denise mentioned about being a community impact organization. And our mission statement is to be the catalyst that enables people to strengthen their communities by investing in one another. The language is intentional to signal this change. We're not just the fundraiser grant maker that we're best known for, although we certainly do those things, but we really are the convener in the community. And we're a place that sets the community table, if you will, to draw people together, to look at community need, and to create solutions. We sit at this unique intersection of the public, private, and independent sectors and nurture innovation and bring consensus to action. We develop and incubate initiatives that require the collaboration of many stakeholders. We connect people and organizations who have intellectual, financial, human resources to the places in the community that need those resources. We advocate for public policy to change the systems that serve the most vulnerable people in our community, most often the systems in the public sector. We collect, we analyze, we disseminate information about our community to help the community plan better and be more responsive to community needs. And now, through the regional 211 system, which we launched just 2 weeks ago today, when you dial 211 on your phone, you will have help 24/7 in 150 languages to community services that you might need at any time in our community to help you get there faster. So it's a little bit more than the old thermometer for fundraising in the town square, and it's a little bit more than the NFL commercials we see on Sunday during halftime. But the main point is that everything that we do take very seriously our name, United Way, small u, small w. Everything we do is in collaboration with stakeholders, donors and grantees and community partners, allied funders in the public sector and the private sector. And as a consequence, we believe that advancing the common good and civic engagement is At its most powerful, a collaborative enterprise. And you will undoubtedly hear that theme throughout my remarks tonight. So the concept of community, of common good, is an enduring concept, an enduring idea that is found in virtually all faith traditions, and certainly it assumes mutual respect and dignity for all, and it was most certainly embraced by our founders when they wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The common good speaks to the things that bind us as members of the human race. It assumes shared values and dreams for ourselves, our families, our neighbors across the street, and our neighbors across the globe. The common good simply assumes that what lifts up your life lifts up my life. And conversely, as Martin Luther King wrote, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all of us indirectly, end quote. But as fundamental and as enduring a concept as common good is, the common good has had its detractors at some various points in time. I certainly recall, and maybe some of you do, the debates. I time it somewhere in the 80s when we were all debating, what does diversity really mean? And many diverse groups who felt marginalized were clamoring to be heard and respected for bringing unique differences to the table. And it was suggested that perhaps the common good was actually devalued that diversity, or at worst, it diminished the richness of it. Some argued that finding the common good actually meant trying to make all of us the same, reducing us to homogeneity. It's a pretty fair question for people who do feel marginalized. But I think all the work over the past few decades that has actually moved and evolved the diversity movement to become the inclusion movement has also helped fuel the resurgence of this idea that there are enduring principles for the common good. And they're inclusive, and they're dynamic, and we all have a responsibility to advance them. Therefore, for me, the concepts of the common good, our civic life, and social capital are inextricable. The value of social connections, known as social capital, and the norms of reciprocity and trustworthiness arise and have been studied by social scientists with great vigor. Some of you may know Robert Putnam at Harvard. He wrote about the decline of social capital from about the 1960s through the end of the 20th century and its effect on communal life. In his book, Bowling Alone, Putnam writes how school performance, public health, crime rates, clinical depression, tax compliance, philanthropy, race relations, community development, census returns, teen suicide, economic productivity, campaign finance, and even simple human happiness are demonstrably affected by how and whether we connect with our family, our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers. Of all the book's surprising claims to me, some of the most surprising involve the impact of social capital on public health. He writes that the more integrated we are with our community, the less likely we are to experience colds, heart attacks, strokes, cancer, depression, and premature death of all sorts. In fact, he writes, such protective efforts have been confirmed for close family ties, friendship networks, participation in social events, and even simple affiliation with religious and civic associations. I love this. He wrote, as a rough rule of thumb, if you belong to no groups but decide to join one, you cut your risk of dying over the next year in half. And if you smoke and you belong to no groups, it's a toss-up statistically whether you should stop smoking or start joining. Well, I wouldn't recommend that not stop smoking, certainly, but he published his book in 2000 and got a lot of attention. I had the opportunity to hear him speak and speak with him about this attention he was bringing and to the way that we needed to rethink in this century ways to create social connection and social capital. Now, more recently, the Yankelovich Monitor, which you may be familiar with, it's the nation's foremost study of U.S. Consumer attitudes and behavior. They've been surveying Americans for 40 years. Well, they've declared that the big trend is social engagement. There's a yearning for connectedness, affiliation, and a sense of community. I certainly hear, as I suspect you do, in the current presidential debate, these sentiments expressed. And certainly the momentum behind Senator Obama's campaign is about this idea of how can we be brought together? Who can best bring us together as community? Well, there's some interesting data points. As recently as 2002, 57% of the people in the Yankelovich survey said, "It is important that others see me as a good neighbor." 57% in 2002. Today, it's 79%. In 2002, 65% said, "It is important to be a good citizen." Today, it's 76%. And increasingly, this interconnectedness is not accomplished over the backyard fence, as it was perhaps in the beginning of the last century. As of 2007, MySpace had 185 million registered users. 185 registered users. And over a 5-month period, between 39 and 45 billion page views per month. 350,000 new registrations each day. Now, my 16-year-old son would tell me that, in fact, MySpace is passé. It's now Facebook in his age group. So we're finding new ways to be connected. And something, I think, has changed in the last decade. It's made it even more palpable. There's this greater yearning, I think. What's happened to me? I would give a lot of credit to the environmental movement. I think the environmental movement has helped create the sense of connectedness in the dialogue about our collective responsibility to preserve this earth. We hit a tipping point, I think, in the last decade. Through all the talk about global warming, and many people and nations now finally have begun to accept their responsibility for the planet, and not just in self-interest, but in the interest of the common good. Now, I have to say, shame on us in the human service field, because I think we've done a far less good job of convincing the public that if my child can't read, or my children are not ready for the 21st century workforce, it will impact the quality of someone else's life, the rest of the community's life. In general, it would be my observation that there's this increasing understanding that we're sort of all in this together. And we must evaluate our actions and our choices and the activities we get involved in the context of the common good, and that we each have a responsibility to make the world a better place has never been more potent, more compelling, more visible, in my view. And what's also interesting is that as individuals, we're not only paying more attention to our personal citizenship, but we also care more and more about the corporate citizenship of the companies in which we invest or from whom we purchase our products. More Yankelovich data. 66% of people avoid buying brands because they are not socially responsible enough. 86% consider their purchases to be a very good way to send a message and influence companies' business practices. For example, 76% are willing to pay at least 5% more for products to save energy. Now, I can tell you a story about myself. My current preferred coffee is organic and for fair trade. I buy it from a local grocer. It's produced by a company owned by 3 women in the San Francisco Bay Area. And what's more, they employ people with disabilities from a San Rafael-based nonprofit called Opportunity for Independence. Now, I love this coffee, but I really feel great about the choice I've made to pick this coffee over some other brands. And I'm not alone. And business is increasingly understanding this. 54% of business schools now require a course in corporate social responsibility, up from 34% in just 2001. And I know the business school here makes ethics and corporate social responsibility an integral part of its curriculum. And there are lots of consultants making lots of money advising companies on how to improve their corporate social responsibility. Now, of course, we could be very cynical about all that And we could say, you know, it's just that consumer behavior that's driving the bottom line, and it's the only motivation for these new business behaviors, this new corporate social responsibility. But the facts are still these. Many businesses are embracing green practices, not just recycling, but all the other R's, you know, reuse and reduce and repair. And every major company has initiatives, corporate social responsibility initiatives, around energy efficiencies. I mean, who knew what global warming was 5 years ago? We all know now. And what a carbon footprint was and how you measure it. Well, every major company in this country is looking at that, and they also have initiatives to improve land use, right? Water use, the use of carcinogenic chemicals, et cetera. I mean, A, we have more science to help us understand these things and their impacts, and B, consumers care. They take notice, and it influences how they spend their money. So, you know, it's overwhelming. But, you know, corporate social responsibility has many legs. It's not just environmental, although that's really important. It's also labor practices and civic participation. Excuse me. You know, we at United Way have a very unique partnership with the business community. Through their association with United Way, 500 Bay Area employers offer their employees a way to get involved in their community, give back in some way as volunteers or financially. And they do that through our partnership at its best, meaning that every employee from top to bottom gets exposed to and educated about the community conditions that need their attention. We take them on tours. We bring in speakers. We involve them in volunteer activities to see and feel and touch the community inside the walls of commerce. Well, this is where we really do, in fact, get invited into the corporate tent. And as such, and when we do, I can tell you that we don't find cynicism. We find open hearts, and we find open minds, and we find people, one by one by one, who really care about their community, really want to be a part of it, really want to give something back, and expect their employer to support them in doing so. Many, many business executives have told me that their role in the community is one of their single most important strategies for recruiting talent, for recruiting employees, especially the younger employees. You know, those Gen Xers, Gen Yers, new millennials, echo boomers, as all the market researchers call them now. That's everybody that's not a boomer, you know, everybody younger than the boomers. And for this, I give at least partial credit to the community service requirements in schools and the service learning strategies. It matters. It has an impact. These young employees show up at work with a deep commitment to their communities and service, and they expect their employers to support them. My son in 7th grade was tutoring kids at Pickleweed. My daughter, who's 9, is a teacher's assistant once a week at the Canal Community Child Care Center. It's a part of life. And we see many, many companies thoughtfully engaged in being good citizens. And, you know, cynicism aside, frankly, I applaud their enlightened self-interest. And I'm happy to be a part of helping the community and the public understand and appreciate their meaningful involvement in civic life and the difference that they choose to make. The truth is they don't have to, but they do. It's the right thing, and they do it. Now, I know when I speak about personal civic involvement in this room with this group of people, I'm absolutely preaching to the choir. You know, another very good neighbor of ours here in Marin is the Marin Community Foundation. Don Jen is here. And the foundation just issued a report on giving and volunteering called Solid Growth, Untapped Potential. It was a survey commissioned by the foundation to understand the giving and volunteering practices of Marin County residents. And we can all be proud to understand, as I report, that 92% of Marin residents, 92%, made a contribution to or volunteered to a charitable organization in 2007, up from 87% in 2000, the last time they did the survey. The survey showed a broad surge across all sectors in volunteering and a strong desire by new residents to Marin to also want to get involved. Overall, 65% of adults volunteered in 2007, up from 52% in 2000. And in 2007, 60% volunteered, new residents volunteered, compared to 43% in 2000. This is incredible, and it's quite high, much higher than the national averages. There are some great signs. 86% of the Marin households made a charitable contribution in the last year. The national average is about 70%, 86% compared to 70%. We can be proud of that. Now, the residents in Marin say they donate for 3 reasons: the cause, civic duty, and because they volunteer for an organization. And that's why we promote volunteerism at every moment, because volunteerism gets people connected and charitable giving flows. So of the issues people support, human service organizations and education still top the list in Marin. Next are environmental organizations, religious organizations, children's organizations other than schools, political organizations, and those related to the arts. It's interesting to me that this is the order, because actually nationally, religious giving is way out ahead of other giving. But in Marin, it's health and human services and education. Now, while our residents are growing their involvement with time and their talent and their financial resources, our nonprofit sector is also robust and growing. Thanks to another great neighbor here, the Center for Volunteer and Nonprofit Leadership. I think Linda Davis is in the house. This organization is studying the status of a nonprofit organization, and next month they'll issue their report. But some of the initial findings are that there are 1,730 nonprofits registered with the IRS in Marin County. The largest number is Health and Human Services, totaling 389. And the next largest is foundations, supporting organizations, et cetera, other kinds of giving programs, totaling 361. The next 3 are education, arts, religion. It's a robust environment. And happily, we have people who want to get involved, and we have many organizations providing ample opportunity to make a difference. Now, there are challenges facing the nonprofits, and the number one is always financial stability. Every single respondent to their survey included that in their top concerns, but also the changing population in Marin and the increasing demand for services. So the matching of the people who want to get involved and the organizations in Marin is a happy opportunity that we have. Now, in this idea of civic life, of course, I do want to acknowledge that how we live our lives as individuals and how we live our lives with and through our family roles and obligations certainly contribute mightily to the common good. There are 2 fundamental legs, if you will, of the civic lives we lead: our personal conduct and our family life. I mean, it is challenging to lead principled, ethical lives. It's challenging to nurture our children and to raise them with the values we uphold. It's challenging to care for our aging parents with compassion. It is. I know it is. I know it is in my life. But of course, there is this 3rd leg of civic life, and it is what we do in and with and through the community. Martin Luther King wrote, at the heart of all that civilization has meant and developed is community, the mutually cooperative and voluntary venture of man to assume a semblance of responsibility for his brother. So in our very busy and challenging lives, we are most motivated to get involved and most satisfied when we do, when we know we've actually made a difference, right? So at the end of the day, does it matter that we wrote the check or that we spend our time as a volunteer? And how will we ascertain the value of the choices we make and the actions we take to live civic lives and advance the common good? So if I may, I'd like to offer a couple suggestions from my 30 years in the public square as a student of many diverse civic leaders who've made lasting impacts. In my United Way life, as I've indicated, I've been focused on the human condition, human need, and human development. And as a consequence, some of the examples I'm going to give you will come from that domain, but there's no doubt that leading a civic life and making lasting, sustainable impact in the arts, the environment, political organizations, religious pursuits are also valuable and important, and hopefully the examples I give translate to those domains as well. So my first principle would be apply your passion and abilities where you are truly needed. Your energy is precious, your intellect is precious, your financial resources are precious. Spend them on things that matter to you. No matter how big or how small, the issue is that gets you moving in here and up here. Make sure it matters. You know the difference between what's a nice-to cause and what are the things that must get done. Do what must get done. And do your homework. When selecting the place to invest your time or your talent or your treasure, make sure that some reason to believe that your efforts will make a difference and produce results that are meaningful to you and meaningful to the people you seek to help. Ask questions closest to the issue. The greatest wisdom about what is working and what is not working lies there. Build on what is right first. There's always some asset worth building upon. Now, this principle applies to organizations as well as individuals. Last fall, as a part of United Way of the Bay Area's strategic planning process, developing our plan for the next 5 years, we held community conversations in all 7 counties. And we spent a morning at the Marin Youth Center with about 50 partners of ours here in Marin. And we asked them the question, what are the challenges and opportunities in our local community? And where can United Way make a difference? And here's what we heard. We heard that healthcare, housing, transportation were at the top of everyone's list of overarching needs. We heard in particular that poverty in Marin is unique due to the high cost of living, and it's not recognized or visible. Health issues, interestingly, did not emerge quite the same way in Marin as they did in some of the other counties, but it emerged differently for children and youth in Marin as community leaders are seeing alcohol abuse and the need for alcohol treatment programs for teenagers as a high priority. We heard a lot about the need to better integrate resources among nonprofits, especially those in youth and those serving health needs for low-income residents. The community asked the United Way to be the convener, to do that thing that we do with the nonprofit community, among funders to take a strategic view, and across sectors, public, private, and nonprofit, with government, businesses, faith-based organizations, and immigrant communities. We heard that there's a special need to serve seniors as the baby boomers head toward retirement without adequate resources, to serve immigrants, especially Latinos, to serve youth, especially those transitioning to adulthood from the foster care system, and immigrant youth, for whom there is a significant educational achievement gap. For example, we heard a lot about what needs to be done to improve the financial stability of families through managing debt, increasing income, and developing assets and savings. These are the things we're reading about as crises across the country. True also in Marin. And while Marin is known for its affluence, we all know that, there are also neighborhoods where the effects of concentrated and persistent poverty are no different than the neighborhoods of the East Bay and San Francisco. United Way has identified 72 neighborhoods in the 9 Bay Area counties we are involved in, where more than 40% of the residents live in poverty. More than 40% of the residents live in poverty. There are 3 Marin neighborhoods, a short walk from where we sit today, Central San Rafael, the Canal and Woodland, all have high concentrations of poverty, and many people struggle throughout other neighborhoods in the county as well. In fact, 60% of the individuals in the Canal area are at or below 185% of the federal poverty level. That translates to $30,000 a year for a family of 4. And that's a concentration equal to San Francisco's Bayview Hunters Point or Richmond's Iron Triangle neighborhood. They are our neighbors. These are very big issues, obviously, and United Way will apply its capabilities to address proven strategies, but certainly not all, and certainly not alone, which brings us to the next principle, my second principle. Collaborate with others for bigger impact. You know, once we find our passion and our unique capabilities, there is a very big temptation to do our own thing. And frankly, I think there's a time and place to do our own thing, to put our personal imprint on something. But I would urge you to reserve some of your time and talent and resources to join with others, to move bigger mountains, to address complex problems that really take many hands. For big issues, we really can't take it alone. You know, there's a lot of stock in popular culture, about finding your own niche, you know, building your personal brand. But even Warren Buffett figured out that he'd do better to join with Bill and Melinda Gates in order to leverage his enormous philanthropic capabilities. He didn't start his own foundation. He joined a like-minded partner. And together, they're going to do very, very big things. And I also like to mention that Warren Buffett is still the largest individual donor to the United Way of Omaha, which is his hometown. And he uses his very substantial gift to match other people's giving, to encourage people to give to their local United Way. You know, in many cases, there's just inherent value in collaboration, I believe. I think collective action is at the heart of democracy. And the more people that there are with skin in the game, the greater likelihood there's going to be for sustained effort and sustainable change. Here in Marin, there are several examples of exemplary collaborations, and I'd like to tell you the story of Marin Prosperity Partners. Several Marin nonprofits participate in United Way's Earn It, Keep It, Save It campaign. This is a regional campaign of 200 partners in which we bring low-income, low-wage workers into volunteer tax assistance sites to make sure that they have free tax assistance to apply for the Earned Income Tax Credit and other refunds, child care refunds and the like, because many of these workers do not know that they're eligible, and the threshold is about $40,000 or so to be eligible for these. And your annual refund can be up to $4,000. And if you've never applied before, you can apply for 3 years back. So imagine having annual income of $40,000, getting a check for $12,000. It's life-changing stuff, right? Well, over the past 6 years, United Way of the Bay Area has led this coalition that's brought back about $70 million to low-wage workers across the Bay Area. Thanks. Thank you. And in the first year of this campaign in Marin, the program was very successful. At just 3 sites, with 26 trained volunteers, 785 returns were filed, which captured more than $774,000 in refunds and credits. That's $774,000 into the pockets of low-income families and back into our local community and our local economy. Now, this success inspired leaders like Gail Feller from Community Action Marin and Joan Capurro, who's here from Bank of Marin, who joined with others to begin planning a coordinated effort to bring services to those families, those working families, a range of supports that would help move them to self-sufficiency. That included savings plans, credit repair, financial education. And these numbers, in fact, are really great. But there are lives behind the numbers, $774,000. Let me tell you about Juanita. Juanita is a single parent of a 13-year-old boy. She's a project associate of a nonprofit organization here in Marin that works with middle school kids on after-school enrichment programs. And she found out about Earn It, Keep It, Save It when she showed up to be a volunteer and to help. And it turned out she herself was eligible. She was qualified. So previously, she had used a commercial tax preparer, and she spent a good deal of her refund to pay for the tax preparation, right? Well, she came into Earn It, Keep It, Save It site. She got a refund, and she joined the Marin City Community Development First-Time Low-Income Home Ownership Program. And just look how she feels about her recent home purchase. So out of the success of the Earn It, Keep It, Save It program came the planning for Marin Prosperity Partners, a collaboration of 20 organizations from nonprofits like Community Action Marin, the Latino Council of Marin, Cecilia Zamora is here, Legal Aid, Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center, to the county's Department of Health and Human Services, the Workforce Investment Board, and this great collaboration of more than 20 partners has now been funded by the United Way, seeking additional funding, to serve and concentrate on 300 families through the coming year to help them with credit counseling and debt repair, financial education, home ownership, small business ownership, and access to public benefits. Linkage to financial services, mainstream, to get them out of the payday lenders and predatory services. All of this is designed to increase financial stability, and we know that families with savings and assets are less likely to divorce, have lower rates of domestic violence, experience fewer chronic illnesses. Which brings me to my final principle. Invest upstream in prevention. We've all heard that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that is so very true in civic life. Getting upstream from problems and building on the strengths of the community and the capacity of the organizations that really focus on the root causes of community problems is a wise investment for everyone. As one of my favorite authors, Richard Cohn, said, "We will honor the heroism of the individual who puts out the fire. Let's also honor the heroism of the community that prevents the fire." We have learned a lot about preventive programs over the years, and here's some of the things that work. Quality child care and early education, youth development programs, financial education and asset building, improved access to resources like through 211, emergency preparedness every day, every year for individuals and institutions that serve our community, health and wellness promotion. And a great example of this promotion is the Healthy Marin Partnership, and Terry Vianello-Rocas is here. Later this week, the partnership will issue its 2008 assessment of Marin County entitled Pathways to Progress. It's another stellar collaborative community partnership with many partners, public and private, and it calls on us for a community-wide commitment to end the behaviors that lead to the top 10 causes of death in Marin County. It's just 4 things: tobacco use, diet, lack of exercise, and alcohol consumption. The partnership, which includes public and private and nonprofit partners under the leadership of Terry and Pat Kendall from Kaiser, will call on the community to promote policies and take actions, a very specific action plan to promote health and well-being. It's an effort with broad-based support from the Marin Community Foundation, the Marin County Office of Education, the County Department of Health and Human Services, the United Way, and many, many nonprofits. There are some sobering facts. Only 19%, and not only, 19% of 9th and 11th graders in Marin and 44% of adults are overweight or at risk of obesity in Marin County. Only slightly more than half of 9th and 11th graders, those they study, report consuming the 5 or more fruits and vegetables that are recommended each day, way below the 75% target. And 4 out of 5 9th graders and 3 out of 5 11th graders report getting only report getting 20 minutes of exercise on 3 of the last 7 days. Now, there's progress being made, and the report will document that. But developing policies for work sites and schools and improving access to healthy choices, it's everybody's work. And look for that report. It's being issued on Thursday morning, in fact. Dozens of organizations have signed on, and it will take all of us. So, apply your passion and abilities where you're truly needed. Collaborate with others for bigger impact. Invest upstream on prevention. Let me end by saying that from my perspective, community work is a privilege. And it's the most gratifying, inspiring life imaginable. I will leave you with a quote from another Wilson, Woodrow, no relation. And I quote, "There is not higher religion than human service. To work for the common good is the greatest creed." I couldn't agree more. So, let's invite some comments from people in the audience. Thanks.
Thank you, Ann. I just wanted to say that I have seen actual youth who come to work for the bank, and when we teach them how to go out and volunteer and why it's important, it is what has created their career ladder. It's not what we train them how to serve, but rather how to go out in the community, and has made all the difference in the world in their success, so thank you.
I'm just curious as to whether you find that there's a disconnect between the data that was coming out about people really want to be involved and want to do good things, and what happens in the political arena, particularly at the state and federal level. And I guess I was reflecting back to my youth while you were talking, being at Michigan State University during the height of the Vietnam War, being out on MAC Avenue, Grand Avenue, taking over the streets. And it's always surprised me that the baby boom generation, as it's moved into the leadership roles, particularly at the state and federal levels, have not been have not had a more powerful leadership role in I guess I wonder, why do we have the political will to go to war in Iraq, but we don't have the political will to solve our education, health care, and poverty problems? So I'm just curious as to what you think about if there is a disconnect. Just a little question.
Yeah, a small question. And I invite other people to comment on that. I'm sure there are opinions about that in the room. It's interesting. I wonder. I was there too, not at Michigan State, but I was there too. And I wonder, what the coming of age of the boomers meant to us in terms of, were we spent? Do we use it all up? Or is, what about this idea that there has been, sort of this retreat? And there are a lot of social scientists, there are even more cards I could have had about some of the decline in engagement, in community engagement that has happened. I'm an optimist. I see it coming back. I mean, when you see 17,000 people showing up for Barack Obama, and the excitement about this real political debate, this real opportunity to change, people are showing up. Has this generation kind of moved through without changing things enough? I don't know. I mean, let me just say one other thing. And I'm going to ask Linda Davis might want to comment on this. Where are you, Linda? There you are. One of the things we're seeing, actually, one of the crises in the nonprofit community is that there are so many boomer executive directors that are just about to retire. And actually, there's a crisis of leadership in the voluntary sector about, all these boomers who've, dedicated their life to the community at the community level, and they're about to retire. And there aren't people necessarily lined up to take over their roles. And that is quite a big problem. I know, Linda, do you have a data point on that in Marin of how many executive directors are going to retire in the next year?
I think the study will show that 50% of the executive directors will leave within the next 5 years.
And so I guess back to your question, Jane, I would say, I think a lot of boomers have dedicated, their life to community service and have been very active and provided leadership. They've founded nonprofits. They've created some of the vibrancy of the voluntary sector. And they're about to leave, and that's a problem. I don't know about the political will. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that. I don't know.
Well, I don't have a solution, but it's just an observation. I'm involved in the service learning training that's going on here at Dominican, which is very profound and enlightening to me, just kind of tracking and moving beyond volunteerism and kind of really addressing community service but partnerships. But one of the downsides of it is the reduce in funding to support health and welfare. Yeah. And so it just seems as though it's important for whatever group to look at ways to influence policy so that it's not just, the problem that I see is that at the community level, when funding gets cut, there are the community services that try to fill that gap. But on a federal level, it's kind of, well, we can cut that because there's an increase in volunteerism. And so it just seems as though,
absolutely right,
for community service organization, one needs to also consider what ways can we put pressure on our national leaders to continue to support and fund these very important community services.
It's absolutely true, and it's interesting, when we at the United Way went out to the community and did these community conversations, the cry from the nonprofit sector for the United Way to become involved more visibly in public policy was quite profound on behalf of the sector, because each and every individual nonprofit, spending time in Sacramento or spending time in Washington is not that efficient. And intermediaries and organizations that with this broad reach, like the United Way, are really turned to. And we've turned up the volume quite a bit on our activity in public policy, and our board adopted a practice and policy about how we enter into the policy debates. One of our biggest priorities over the last year has been health coverage for children. And we have been very active at the national and the state level to bring more voices to Sacramento and to Washington to say that all children, you figure out how, must be covered, must have health coverage. And that's something, quite honestly, maybe even 10 years ago, probably the United Way wouldn't have been that active in. But there's an increasing demand for that. Lorne Needle is here. He's our Vice President for Community Investment in the West Bay in Marin. He's your guy in Marin. And he also leads our public policy initiatives. Lorne, do you want to speak a little bit about the public policy work?
Well, I just think the question is really well taken. There are things that can be done in policy to change and improve lives in Marin and the other counties that we serve that don't require money, but there are many things that need to happen for people in communities that do require public will and public investment. And if you think about the kind of poverty rates that you were talking about, Anne, and the conditions of people, poverty in some part is an absence of resources and money for people to be able to get for themselves and their families the opportunities that they need, and there need to be more resources in a lot of situations for that. Now, it's sometimes difficult, especially for people in community who are working from the heart and giving their time and their labor and are intimidated by issues of finance and money to get out and talk about that. But I think that's one of the roles that United Way can play, is to talk about how we as a public through our government can make smart investments, and that can make all the difference in people's lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you mentioned some of the priorities through your focus group work. I mean, when we're in the business of education here at this campus, and we're very proud that we have a diverse campus here. About 50% of our freshmen over the last half a dozen years have been from diverse populations. This is a different place than it was when we were in college. Mm-hmm. And what's really shocking to me is to know that in Marin County, if we look at the statistics, we're like #1 in the state in education, unless you disaggregate that. Mm-hmm. And when you disaggregate that number, we're like the 56th out of 57 counties in the state, where if you're Caucasian or Asian, one in two high school students will be prepared to go to college. If you're any other ethnicity in Marin, 1 in 10 is prepared to go to college. What is this saying? It seems to me it's saying that multiple variables are happening. I don't know if students aren't properly counseled to go to college. Can you speak to what the United Way has done or is doing with regards to educational equity?
Well, I really wish our partner Amy Reich at the First Five Commission is here tonight. She had a bike accident. In fact, the educational achievement gap is something that has many people's attention, not the least of which is the First Five Commission. I guess what I would say first is that we really do focus on early childhood education, start as early as possible. And there are practices and policies and strategies that have been proven in other communities around starting at the youngest years to ensure that gap is as narrow or doesn't exist. But it takes community will. There's a great case study in Madison, Wisconsin, that the United Way of Dane County was involved with. And it took the media, the public school district, the health and welfare department, and it was a community-wide effort. And they declared they were going to close the achievement gap. It took 10 years, and they did it. And it's about parent education. It's about, early childhood education. It's about support for learning differences throughout. It's about making sure kids aren't hungry when they show up for school. One of the strategies that we've employed, and maybe I might ask Lauren to comment on this, is this whole idea of creating school community hubs. You've heard it before that teachers are expected to do a whole lot more than just educate today. Kids show up with so many more needs in the classroom, and they're simply not equipped. They're not resourced for it. And we at the United Way of the Bay Area have been involved in a number of programs where we've created these school community hubs. Lauren, you want to comment on that? We actually do not have one at the moment in, no, that's not true. Go ahead, you talk about it, Lauren.
Sure, and our partners at the Marin Community Foundation figured this out years ago too and supported the schooling services efforts here in the county. And one of the best examples of a school community partnership is at Bahia Vista in the canal. And you know, it's one thing I like about working in our field is that sometimes common sense is the answer, and when you can put common sense to work for a lot of people, you see a lot of good things happen. It makes abundant sense to put health services and connections to jobs and connections to counseling at schools where kids spend their day and where their parents come and go. And when you do that right and you put the services there and you welcome the parents and you treat the families with respect, hundreds upon hundreds of people in an individual school can get the help they need. And think about if every school in Marin County that needed it had a school community partnership where those kinds of services were available and where parents were not only getting served but being asked to be part of the solution. I get to be timekeeper tonight. I only think we have time for a few more questions, and I'm going to throw you one.
Okay.
I noticed there's a lot of students, a lot of young people in the audience tonight, and I remember when I was in college, I was wondering if I wanted to do something about advancing the common good, where do I start? How do I get involved in that? Your thoughts?
That's great. Well, first of all, I would say volunteer. Find opportunities to use your talents. I mean, volunteerism is not just giving, it's also receiving. It's an opportunity to test new skills, learn new things, be exposed to leaders and opportunities that your daily life might not otherwise bring to you. I would also say to talk to adults in your life, whether they're your professors or the leaders in the organizations where you might volunteer, about what their path was. There's no single path. There are all kinds of paths. I look in this audience for so many people who are involved in our community, and they've all taken different paths. I would say, I know this school is so dedicated to producing great educators and nursing professionals, and as well as people through the business school and other disciplines. You are in a great place to learn those skills and to contribute to your community. You know, I think that we all find our own path. But I think the opportunity at this point in your life as a college student to be out and explore, talk to people you admire about their lives, their civic lives, and what it means to them and how they found their path, those would be my thoughts. Anything else? Way in the back.
Very simple question. What is the brand of the coffee? I'd like to support it as well, but if you would share that with us.
Well, I was hoping somebody would ask that. I have no financial stake in this company, but it's called J.R. Mugs, and I buy it at United, and there are several blends, and I particularly favor the Mocha Java. J.R. Mugs. Yeah, great. Thank you for that question. So I just want to leave you with some thoughts, and encouragement about hopefully this time together, this brief time together, has made you think a little bit about your civic life and where you want it to go and how you find that meaning and that impact. And I will share with you a little something that you are going to begin to see, and that is that United Way nationally is developing a new kind of platform, a new marketing position. And it's about this very simple idea. It's about give, advocate, volunteer, and ultimately live united. Thank you very much. Thanks for being with us.